It had been a long day for Alex. Work had been exhausting, endless reports, calls that never seemed to end, and a boss who never seemed satisfied. By the time he reached his apartment, all he wanted was a hot shower and a few minutes of peace. The sound of the city outside was a dull roar through the windows, but inside his apartment was quiet. He turned on the shower, letting the water run warm and comforting over his tired body. The steam filled the small bathroom, curling around him like a soft blanket. He closed his eyes and leaned back against the wall, letting the warmth wash away the stress of the day. That's when he heard it. A sound so strange, so sudden that he jumped. A soft pop, like a bubble bursting in the air. The steam seemed to flicker, and for a moment Alex thought he was imagining things. He opened his eyes, and what he saw froze him in place. There she was, a girl, standing in the middle of his shower, completely drenched as if she had fallen from the sky. She was small, maybe in her early 20s, with hair that shimmered strangely like silver in the light. Her eyes were even more unusual, pale, glowing faintly, as if holding tiny stars inside. She blinked at him, her expression a mix of confusion and fear. Alex's heart raced. "Who are you?" he asked, voice shaking. His hand instinctively went to the edge of the bathtub, gripping it as if it could anchor him in reality. She shook her head slowly, shivering. I don't know," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost musical, like it didn't belong in a human throat. I just appeared." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. Teleportation wasn't supposed to be real, at least not in any human sense he had ever heard of. Yet here she was, standing in his bathroom, dripping water onto the tile floor, looking as lost and fragile as a child who had wandered too far. "Okay," Alex said slowly, trying to keep calm. You can stay here. Just for now." He grabbed a towel from the rack and wrapped it around her shoulders. She flinched slightly at the touch, as if contact was unfamiliar, but she didn't pull away. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. She just stood there, shivering, her eyes wide as she took in the bathroom, the steam, and even the small tiles on the floor. Alex studied her carefully, trying to make sense of what was happening. She wasn't like anyone he had ever seen before, yet there was something undeniably human about her. The way her lips quivered slightly, the way her hands curled into fists, the almost childlike wonder in her gaze. "What's your name?" Alex asked gently. She hesitated, looking down at her feet. "I don't remember," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know where I came from." Alex swallowed hard. His mind raced with questions. Was she some kind of experiment? An alien? A visitor from another dimension? And yet, the fear in her eyes, the shiver in her body, it felt real. It felt human. And something inside him refused to leave her alone in the cold and wet. "All right," he said, finally, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was pounding. "Let's get you out of the shower. We'll figure things out." He helped her step out, careful not to slip on the wet tiles, and guided her to the small living room of his apartment. He wrapped her in a dry blanket while she sat on the couch, still trembling. She looked around slowly, eyes darting at the furniture, the walls, the small plant on the windowsill. Every little thing seemed new to her, and Alex couldn't help but feel a strange mix of awe and protectiveness. I'm Alex," he said softly, sitting across from her. "And you? You can stay here until you figure things out." "Okay?" She nodded, her eyes glimmering, and for a brief moment she smiled. It was small, almost shy, but it was there. And in that moment, Alex realized something he hadn't expected. He didn't know where she had come from, and he didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing. She needed him, and somehow he was ready to give her whatever comfort he could. Outside, the city roared on, indifferent to the strange events unfolding in a tiny apartment. But inside, a connection had already begun. A fragile, silent promise between a lost girl from who knows where and a man who had never expected anything extraordinary to happen in his life. And somehow, in that ordinary bathroom filled with steam and water, the impossible had arrived. The next morning, Alex woke to the smell of coffee. He rubbed his eyes and blinked at the sunlight spilling through the curtains. For a moment, he wondered if everything from last night had been a dream. But then he saw her, sitting quietly at the small kitchen table, wrapped in a towel, staring at the steam rising from the cup in front of her. She looked different in the daylight. The shimmer in her hair seemed softer, like strands of silver silk, and her pale eyes held something new, curiosity. She had tilted her head slightly, watching the sunlight catch on the coffee cup as though it were the most fascinating thing in the world. Alex cleared his throat. "Morning," he said, trying to sound casual, though his heart still raced. "Did you sleep okay?" She shook her head, almost sheepishly. I don't know," she whispered. "I am not used to this." Alex nodded. He understood. Everything about his world must be confusing to her. The apartment, the furniture, even the ordinary smell of coffee and toast, all of it would be completely alien. And yet there was something magical in the way she observed it, like a child seeing sunlight for the first time. Over breakfast, she barely ate but drank the coffee slowly, tilting the cup with care. She kept asking small questions, one after another in her soft voice. "What is this? Why does the water smell like that? Why do you wear this?" Alex answered as best he could. "That's coffee. It's bitter, but humans drink it to wake up. That's a shower towel. We wear it to stay dry." He watched her eyes widen at every explanation, and despite the strangeness of it all, he felt a warmth in his chest. She was learning, noticing, absorbing everything. It was human curiosity, raw and beautiful. After breakfast, she followed him as he went about his morning routine. She watched him brush his teeth, wash his face, even comb his hair. Alex felt a little self-conscious at first, but her fascination was impossible to ignore. She pointed at the toothbrush and tilted her head. "You brush your teeth every day?" "Yes," he said, laughing nervously. "It keeps our mouths healthy." She nodded solemnly, as if this were a revelation of great importance. "Your world is strange, but nice." Alex couldn't help but smile. "It's messy too," he admitted. "But we try our best." She looked at him quietly for a long moment, then whispered, almost to herself, "I like it." The day passed, in a series of small, quiet discoveries. She touched the soft fabric of the couch, ran her fingers along the edge of a book, and laughed softly when a small fly buzzed near the window. Every sound, every texture, every simple human action seemed to enchant her. Alex realized something incredible. She wasn't just learning about the world. She was learning about humans, and she seemed to appreciate the little things we often take for granted. By afternoon, she had begun exploring the apartment more confidently. She opened cabinets, peeked into drawers, and even tried picking up a pen to write. Her movements were careful, deliberate, as if she were learning to respect objects in a way Alex had never seen before. She wasn't just curious, she was gentle, thoughtful, and immensely aware of her surroundings. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm golden glow through the windows, Alex watched her from the sofa. There was a sense of wonder in the way she moved, a quiet reverence for the ordinary. It made him see his own life differently. He had spent years rushing, ignoring details, forgetting the small joys. But watching her, he felt the world through her eyes, and it was beautiful. Then she turned to him, her glowing eyes catching the light. "Humans are strange. You laugh at small things. You hurt each other. You love." Her words were simple, but they carried weight, as if she were trying to understand something enormous. Alex felt a lump in his throat. "Yes," he said softly. "That's true. We're messy, but we Try to be good. She nodded, as if the answer satisfied her, but her eyes remained thoughtful. I want to learn more about you, about humans. In that moment, Alex realized something extraordinary. She hadn't come here by accident. She hadn't simply teleported into his life to vanish again. She had chosen somehow to stay and understand, to witness, to connect. And for the first time since she appeared, he allowed himself to hope. Maybe humans weren't perfect. Maybe the world was chaotic and strange. But maybe, just maybe, the things that made them human, their curiosity, their warmth, their ability to care, were enough to inspire someone from the stars. As night fell, and the city lights flickered outside the windows, Alex and the girl sat together in silence. She leaned slightly closer, as if afraid to break the fragile peace, and Alex knew deep down that whatever came next, this strange, shimmering girl had changed his life, and he had already begun to change hers. Days passed, and the apartment began to feel like a small world of its own, separate from the chaos outside. Alex noticed her growing confidence each morning. She moved more easily through the rooms, touched objects with curiosity rather than hesitation, and smiled more often. She had begun calling him by name, and although she still struggled with words sometimes, she laughed freely whenever something amused her. That laughter was new to Alex, a bright, ringing sound that filled the apartment in a way nothing else had. One afternoon, Alex decided to teach her something simple but profoundly human, making a sandwich. He laid out bread, lettuce, cheese, and tomato slices on the kitchen counter. She watched, tilting her head, her silver hair catching the light. "What is this?" she asked, pointing at the tomato. "Tomato," Alex said. "It's food. Humans eat it. It tastes sweet, a little sour." She hesitated for a moment, then picked up a slice, studied it, and finally tasted it. Her eyes widened. Strange, but good. She repeated the word slowly, savoring it. Alex chuckled. "You're learning fast." It wasn't just the food that fascinated her. It was the way humans lived, the small rituals that often went unnoticed. She watched him drink water, brush crumbs off the counter, even the way he sighed when a sandwich didn't come out perfectly. And with every observation, her admiration for humans seemed to grow. "Humans? You care about small things," she said quietly one day. "Even simple things." Alex nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "Sometimes it's the small things that matter the most." It was during moments like this that their connection deepened. Words were not always needed. She would reach for his hand when unsure, or tilt her head and study his expression as if she were trying to understand not just his words, but his feelings. Alex realized that humans had an invisible language, one spoken not with words, but with glances, gestures, and small acts of kindness, and she was learning it quickly, almost instinctively. One evening, after a quiet dinner, she asked something that caught him off guard. "Why do humans hurt each other?" Her voice was soft, almost trembling. She looked at him with a mixture of fear and disbelief. You have power. You could be kind. But you fight." Alex felt a sudden weight in his chest. How could he explain it? How could he tell her that humans were capable of terrible mistakes, that they often let fear, anger, and jealousy take control? And yet he also knew he couldn't hide the truth. We're not perfect," he said slowly. "Sometimes we hurt each other, yes, but we also love. We care. We try to be better. Most of the time, we just get lost along the way." She nodded, absorbing every word. "I see," she whispered. "You are strange and beautiful." That evening, something shifted. She moved closer, sitting on the edge of the couch, her hand brushing his without realizing it. Alex felt warmth spread through him, not just from her touch, but from the trust she was showing. She had chosen to be here, in his world, learning, observing, and slowly opening her heart to humans. As the night deepened, they sat side by side, watching the city lights flicker outside. She leaned slightly against him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. Alex realized that she had not only learned about humans but had begun to see the beauty in their chaos. She saw their resilience, their curiosity, their capacity to connect, and she admired it. For the first time since she appeared in his shower, Alex allowed himself to relax completely. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring or how long she would stay. But in that moment he understood something fundamental. Humans had a strange power, one that transcended technology, violence, and even space. They had the power to touch lives, to inspire trust, to teach empathy, and she, whoever or whatever she was, had chosen to see that in him. He looked down at her, silver hair shimmering in the dim light. "You know," he said softly, "you're learning faster than I ever imagined. Maybe you're starting to understand what makes us human." She smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering. "I want to understand everything," she said. "I want to know humans." Alex's heart swelled. She had come from somewhere unknown, perhaps even impossible, yet here she was, choosing to stay, choosing to connect. And in her choice, he felt a truth that no one had ever taught him, that humans were extraordinary, not because they were perfect, but because they were capable of opening their hearts, even to the impossible. And in that quiet apartment, filled with the soft hum of city life outside, a bond had formed, one that would not be broken easily. A fragile, powerful connection between a man and a girl who had teleported from who knew where, drawn together by curiosity, trust, and the undeniable pull of human warmth. As the days turned into a week, Alex noticed a subtle change in her. The wonder in her eyes was still there, but it was now mixed with questions he couldn't easily answer. She watched him carefully, observing every action, every reaction, and sometimes her silver eyes would darken with worry. One evening, while they were sitting on the couch reading a book together, she asked something that made Alex freeze. "Alex, why do humans fight?" Her voice was quiet but intense, like she had been carrying the question for days. She turned to him fully, her glowing eyes searching his face for an honest answer. You have strength. You can help each other. But you hurt. Why?" Alex swallowed hard. He had been avoiding this question, trying to protect her from the darker truths of the world. But now, he knew he couldn't. He looked down at his hands, the muscles tense with guilt and helplessness. We hurt each other because sometimes we are scared. Sometimes we forget love, or we let anger take over. Humans, we make mistakes, terrible ones. And sometimes, we can't fix them." She stayed silent, her gaze lowering to the floor as if the words themselves weighed heavily on her. Then she whispered almost to herself, "I do not understand. Why destroy what you love?" Alex felt a lump in his throat. She had come from somewhere beyond his understanding, somewhere without war, without fear. And now, she was seeing humans, real humans, without the filter of wonder. He wanted to explain, to tell her that despite the chaos, humans were capable of great good, but the fear in her eyes made it difficult to speak further. I want to stay," she said finally, her voice trembling. Alex looked up in surprise. "I want to learn. I want to understand humans. But I am scared." Her words pierced him. He realized that she had not only come here seeking curiosity but also trust in a species that could be as violent as it was kind. And now, he was responsible for that trust. But before he could respond, a sudden sound shook the apartment. A loud, mechanical knock echoed through the hallway, followed by a voice that made Alex's stomach drop. "Open up, this is the government. We know someone teleported here." The color drained from her face. She looked at Alex, her hand gripping his tightly. "They will take me?" she whispered, panic rising in her voice. Alex felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't known he possessed. He stood in front of her, blocking her from view. "No, they won't take you. Not while I'm here." His voice was firm, steady, but his heart raced with fear. He knew they would not understand her, or why she was here. To them, she was an anomaly, a problem to solve, a specimen to study. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. She trembled against him, eyes wide with fear. "Alex, I don't want to go." "You won't," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, though adrenaline burned through him. "I promise. I'll keep you safe. I don't care what they say. You're not just some experiment. You're special." Her gaze met his, filled with a mixture of fear and trust. In that moment, Alex realized something profound. Humans were not just fragile or weak. Humans had courage, persistence, and a willingness to protect what they loved, even when the odds seemed impossible. And now, that courage had to show itself. The knocking stopped suddenly, replaced by silence. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the struggle inside the small apartment. She clung to him, trembling as he whispered assurances, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on him. She had chosen to stay, and now that choice had put them both in danger. I trust you," she said quietly, her voice shaking, but resolute. "I stay because you." Alex hugged her tightly, feeling the truth of her words. "I know," he said softly, "and I won't let anything take you from here." That night they sat together, holding hands in silence. The danger had passed for now, but the question lingered. How long could she stay? How long before the world caught up to them? Yet as he watched her breathe, saw the faint rise and fall of her chest, Alex realized that the bond they shared was stronger than fear. Humans might be messy, imperfect, and dangerous, but they were also capable of bravery, love, and connection that transcended logic, rules, or even space. And in that quiet apartment, a fragile promise formed between them. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The days after the incident with the government knock were calmer, but Alex noticed a new determination in her. She was no longer just observing humans. She was learning to live like one. Every small task became a discovery, and every discovery was a moment of joy that lit up her silver eyes. She followed him into the kitchen one morning, her steps careful but confident. "What is breakfast?" she asked. Alex smiled. "It's the first meal of the day. It gives us energy." She tilted her head, considering this. "Energy to live?" "Yes," he replied, handing her a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. She touched the food hesitantly at first, then tasted it. Her eyes widened. "Delicious. Strange. But good," she murmured, repeating the words as if learning a new language. Over the next week, she learned routines, brushing teeth, making coffee, even folding clothes. She laughed when she spilled water or dropped a sock, and Alex laughed with her, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't realized he was missing. She began copying his expressions, tilting her head when confused, frowning when concentrating, smiling when pleased. Each small imitation made Alex feel proud, as if he were teaching her to be human in a way no one else ever could. One afternoon, they went for a walk outside. The city was loud and chaotic, but she seemed fascinated by everything: the honking cars, the chatter of people, the smell of street food. She reached out and touched a tree trunk gently, marveling at the rough texture. "Life is strange," she said softly, looking at Alex. "Humans live in chaos, but beauty." Alex nodded. "Yes, even in chaos there's beauty. Humans, we notice it in small things." She smiled, a quiet, thoughtful smile. "I want to see everything, learn everything. Humans, your world." By evening, she had begun experimenting. with small skills herself. She attempted to cook, imitating Alex's movements, and laughed when she made a mess. She tried reading books aloud, her voice soft and musical, stumbling over words but never giving up. She even tried jogging around the small park near his apartment, wobbling at first, then gaining rhythm. Every step, every attempt, made Alex feel amazed. One night they sat on the rooftop of his building watching the stars. She leaned slightly against him and he could see the wonder in her eyes. "Your world," she whispered, "is small and large. Humans. You live. And you care." Alex felt something swell in his chest. She had begun to see humans, not as flawed or violent, but as resilient, as capable of love, trust, and wonder. "We do our best," he said softly. "Sometimes we fail, sometimes we fight, but we try." She nodded. "I like humans. Even broken." Her words were simple, but the emotion behind them was strong. She had begun to admire not just his kindness, but the very nature of humanity, their determination, their ability to grow, their relentless curiosity. Over the next few days, her progress was astonishing. She learned to cook full meals, fold clothes neatly, even use a small notebook to write down thoughts. Alex watched her carefully, amazed at how quickly she adapted. But what amazed him most was not her speed of learning, it was her heart. She was genuinely fascinated by humans, not just as a subject to study, but as beings worth understanding, caring for, and protecting. One evening, as she attempted to play a simple tune on the piano he had at home, she paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. "Humans make music," she said softly. "To express?" "Yes," Alex said, smiling. "To express feelings, joy, sadness, love." She pressed a key, then another, creating a tiny melody. Her eyes glimmered with pride and wonder. "I want to feel this too." Alex felt a lump in his throat. She had come from nowhere, into a world she didn't understand, and now she was not only learning to survive, she was beginning to feel, to experience, and to love the small, messy, beautiful parts of being human. And in that small apartment filled with laughter, music, and the scent of cooking, Alex realized something profound. Humans were extraordinary, not because of strength or intelligence, but because of curiosity, kindness, and the courage to keep learning and loving, even when life was difficult. She was proof of it. She had come from another world, another reality, yet she had chosen to embrace humanity. And in doing so, she had reminded him of what made humans special: the ability to touch lives, to inspire trust, and to change hearts in ways that nothing else could. As they sat together, the city lights shimmering around them, Alex knew that their journey had only just begun. But one thing was certain: she was learning what it truly meant to be human, and she was falling in love with it. The calm of their life together shattered one evening with a sharp, urgent knock at the door. Alex froze, his heart pounding as a voice called out from the hallway. "Open up, this is a government operation, we know someone teleported here." Her silver eyes widened in terror. She clung to his arm, trembling. "Alex, they will take me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Alex felt a surge of fear, but it was matched by determination. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "No, they won't take you," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." The knock grew louder, insistent, as if the authorities outside were determined to force their way in. She pressed closer to him, her small body shaking. "Alex, I don't want to go," she said, voice quivering. He knelt in front of her, holding her hands tightly. "You won't," he promised, looking into her glowing eyes. "I won't let anyone hurt you. I don't care what they say. You belong here, with me." Her lips trembled and tears formed at the corners of her eyes. "I trust you," she whispered. "I stay because you—" Her voice faltered, but the meaning was clear. She had chosen him, and now he had to protect her at all costs. Alex's mind raced. How could he keep her safe? How could he explain her existence to anyone else? He realized that the world outside might never understand her origins, her powers, or her innocence. To them, she was a phenomenon, a threat, or worse, a tool to study. But to him, she was something far more precious. She was alive, fragile, and extraordinary. The knocking outside stopped for a moment, replaced by tense silence. The city noises continued, oblivious to the danger lurking at the threshold of his apartment. He guided her to sit behind the couch, shielding her from view. "Stay here, don't make a sound," he whispered. She nodded, biting her lip, eyes wide with fear and trust. Alex moved to the door, heart hammering. He could see the shadowed figures through the peephole, officials armed with devices he didn't fully understand, determined to claim her. He swallowed hard. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and yet he remembered what made them extraordinary. Their courage, their resilience, their capacity to protect what they loved, even against impossible odds. He opened the door slightly, forcing a calm he didn't feel. "She's gone," he said firmly, his voice steady. "You have nothing here." The agents hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Alex held his ground, chest tight, adrenaline coursing through him. "I said she's gone," he repeated. Humans could be stubborn, but they could also recognize determination, and right now he radiated it. After what felt like an eternity, they left, murmuring into their communication devices. The hallway fell silent. Alex sank back against the door, trembling, relief washing over him. He turned to her, and she ran into his arms, clinging tightly. I thought I would lose you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You won't," he said, holding her close. "Not while I live. Not ever." She buried her face in his chest, shivering, and he could feel the fragile weight of her trust, the kind of trust that was given only when someone believes you can protect them, even against the impossible. That night they stayed close, neither speaking much. The danger had passed, but the memory lingered. Alex realized something profound. Humans were messy, imperfect, and often cruel, but they were also capable of courage, love, and protection. He had seen it in himself tonight, and he knew that he would go to any lengths to keep her safe. She lifted her head slightly, looking at him with those luminous eyes. "Alex, humans, you fight, you hurt, you destroy, but you protect too," she said softly. "I understand." "Now." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words. She had seen both sides of humanity, the good and the bad, and had chosen to stay. Not because it was easy, but because she saw something worth protecting, worth loving. As they sat together, the city lights flickering outside, Alex held her hand tightly. He knew the world would never stop challenging them, never stop threatening the fragile life she had chosen here. But he also knew something else. Humans were extraordinary, not because they were perfect, but because they could face danger, fear, and uncertainty, and still rise to protect what mattered most. And in that quiet apartment, two lives, one human, one extraordinary, had become inseparable. Whatever came next, Alex knew they would face it together. She had chosen humanity, and he had chosen to protect her. Tonight, in the stillness of the city, they both understood the truth. Humans may fight, hurt, and falter, but their capacity for love, trust, and courage could defy anything, even the impossible. Months passed, and life settled into a quiet rhythm, though the memory of that night still lingered. The government had not returned, and Alex had taken precautions to make sure she remained safe. The apartment had transformed into a little world of learning and laughter, where the impossible felt ordinary, and the ordinary became extraordinary. She had grown comfortable, moving freely, laughing freely, and even teasing Alex in her soft, musical voice. She had learned to cook meals that rivaled his, fold clothes neatly, and even mimic his quirks with an endearing precision. But more than skills, she had learned humanity, the warmth of connection, the joy in small things, the bittersweet beauty of emotions. One evening, they sat on the rooftop again, the city glowing beneath them like a sea of tiny fireflies. She leaned on his shoulder, her silver hair glimmering in the fading light. "Alex," she whispered, "I have learned humans are strange, but beautiful. You love, you care, you protect.